Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of the Variety Gaming Podcast. In this episode, we're descending into the cold this fall season with Frostpunk 2, and later on, in order to keep warm, we're going to do the Subscription Shuffle, which is a new segment all about gaming subscriptions. Find out which ones we're highlighting this episode later, but first, my co-host with the beard that keeps him warm in these cold times, Rayu, how you doing, and are you excited for Frostpunk 2? I mean, give us the details on this one.
Oh, I'm doing well. So Frostpunk 2, it's developed and published by 11-Bit Studios. Develop, expand, and advance your city in a society survival game set 30 years after an apocalyptic blizzard ravaged Earth. In Frostpunk 2, you face not only the perils of never-ending winter, but also the powerful factions that watch your every step inside the Council Hall. Currently available as of September 20th on Steam, Mac, Epic Games, and Game Pass, the PC version. And coming soon to a console near you. At some point in 2025, this game will be out. We don't know, and 11-Bit hasn't released an official date as of right now.
They have not, but it has been officially released on PC platforms. And like you said, the PC Game Pass, in addition, as soon as it releases on console, it will be available for the console Game Pass. So Game Pass users have no fear. I mean, unless you play the game, actually. You should have some fear if you're going to play the game, because this game is difficult. That's all I can say. This game's difficult. It's brutal, even on I played on officer difficulty, but what difficulty did you play on?
I didn't play on officer. I think I chose the balanced, like the middle
Normal.
Between the two. Yeah, I think normal difficulty. And it's punishing. I mean, you're actively working against the clock. And it's crazy. Like, I played the original Frostpunk and I thought it was difficult. I didn't know it would get even more difficult in this one. So it's very cool. It's a very complex type of game, because not only are you managing, at least in the prologue portion of it, you're managing 3 different resources. Yeah, because you need your materials, you need your oil, and you need your food. So you have to manage those. But then that 4th one of warmth, like that being added in as a resource that you have to factor in with all of your decisions and how you're structuring your towns and your different districts. Like it's a lot, and all while the clock's working against you. I can't tell you how many people I lost just sick. So then you lose your workforce. So then your production slows down, and it is a punishing game. You have to think, and I feel like even with the difficulty, I know you played on a higher one. It gets to a point where, and it even says in the difficulty selection screen that there's a margin of error in like this one, and there's like a smaller margin of error, and then there's like no margin of error, and it's just like, wow. This game is going to push you to the limit with, like, you have to have a plan, stick to your plan, and if your plan falls apart, well, that's it. There's no recovering from it, depending, again, on the difficulty that you chose. But I also like the fact, now, again, getting to just through the prologue that we did, I really appreciated how hard it was, because if I felt it was too easy, then I may not have been like, okay, so people got sick, or okay, people died, and just kind of moved on. But the fact that it did punish you, it's like, okay, these people died, now guess what? Now you don't have any workforce. Or, I'm going to make a decision to tighten our belts. I think that was something that kind of cracked me up with some of the terminology that was used for the decision making. We got to tighten our belts so nobody can have extra rations of their food, and then people got pissed off at you, and then people started starving to death, and it's like, well, we got to store up supplies, and there's not enough workforce because people are sick, and it's just like a cascading domino effect of, I can't get enough resources because people are sick and dying, and people are sick and dying because I don't have enough resources. That's what I thought about the difficulty. What else did you find in the game, Matrix?
So yeah, so it was. You mentioned the workforce and the heat, all the different resources that you have to manage. My playthrough was, like I said, I decided to pick the officer difficulty because I had played Frostpunk. It was a while ago though, so I don't remember everything, but I did remember that the basic concept is because the world is super cold, you have to keep your town heated. And in order for you to do that, you need oil. Obviously, you need food because you have a town full of hungry people. And I'm going to talk specifically about the prologue mission, but this does apply to other things. And we mainly focus on the prologue mission because that's what a majority of you fine folks, if you decide to play the game, will, more or less experience. But the that mission in particular, there were a lot of like tough decisions. So at first I was like, oh, we need to break apart the ice in order to get to our resources, get to the oil, get to the advanced crafting materials, get to the basic crafting materials, which were across a cavern. There was also food scattered about that we needed to get. And also equally important, you needed to stockpile food for when the superstorm frozen winter came through. And you only had, I think it was 80 something weeks in order to get that. And so there's a lot of the time constraint is very tight. I don't know how it is on other difficulties. I imagine on even higher difficulties, the time constraint is even more so. But on the officer difficulty, you need to be very concise with what you do, and the decisions that you make matter a lot. And so, like, for example, I decided not to immediately go after the advanced crafting materials, and suddenly I needed a bunch of advanced crafting materials, and I could only farm 20 a week, and it was not fun. I also broke apart too much ice in one area of my home base and not enough branching out into the other areas. And so then, because I didn't branch out far enough, I had to suffer other consequences. I'll try not to get too in depth into it in order not to give spoilers to anyone who decides to try this game. Again, it's just the prologue, so there is a ton of other stuff to talk about, and I'll talk a little bit about the end game too, because I didn't get super end game, but I watched some streams and whatnot. I'll get into that a little bit later, but decisions matter. And like I said, me not branching out fast enough, me not being very targeted with my construction, I suffered greatly. I suffered greatly. I needed to make a decision between letting a bunch of my citizens walk out into the frozen wasteland and potentially die, or keeping everybody inside and potentially, if I don't build fast enough and do good enough, potentially everybody starves during the giant frozen apocalypse. So,
Oh, hang on. I'm gonna jump in right there
go ahead.
because I had that same decision. I want to know what you chose.
Okay, so I have to ask, did you make it far enough to get to the other food source?
Yep.
You did?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I didn't. So one of my options was not, it was grayed out. It was not available. And I chose to keep as many people in my town as possible and to just, do my best to get to better food sources and to maximize my, food storage. What did you do?
I sent him out into the cold.
Oh, you did?
I
Oh man.
I was sitting there looking at it because it was mine came up as like, oh, the elderly are gonna go, and
Yeah,
then
yeah, yep, that's what it was for me too.
it
Yeah.
was funny because at the bottom it also said this will not impact your workforce. I'm like, well, y'all aren't working anyway, so what do I need you for? Go ahead.
Did you okay, did you notice though what this is one thing I love about the world design? Did you notice that earlier someone was saying there was a little note that popped up and it was like an elderly person sits and watches their grandchildren play and they think that if worst case scenario, like they'll decide to go without food in order to, so that their grandchildren could go on. Like they were already like preparing for that inevitable outcome. So it's like that foreshadowing of a decision that you would have to make if you didn't do some of these other things that are incredibly important. And it's that's one thing I love about this game is just, and I'm sure the more you play it, like the less great it gets, quote unquote, because you're used, oh, I see this, I see that, I see the other thing. But like, especially when you first start playing this, it's so like the decisions feel so weighty. Maybe for you, you're just like, not part of the workforce, screw it. But I was like, man, I can't. These are people.
No, and that was something that. So when I played the original Frostpunk, I tried to go through the same mentality of like, oh, these are people. This is like we don't want to lose anybody. It's unfortunate situation, and then it's like going into this one, having that knowledge of okay, that's kind of how they phased or I'm sorry, positioned the game for us to have to decide on like, okay, we can be like, you know, we're going to try to save as many people as we can, or we are all going to survive. Like there was no kind of in between. You had to pick a side. So for me, at going through this with us for us recording it, I just went into the mindset that I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that the most people survive, but not everyone's going to live. Like, I know it's not possible. So if you're not contributing to the workforce, if you're not actively contributing to the survival of the people, go on and take a walk.
But you know what's funny though is that if you think about it, it's kind of your fault that they have to go out there because you didn't branch out to the other, so it's, I don't know, there's that mentality of just like, well, shoot, we got to do better. The next time someone suggests, oh, hey, there's some seals down there, that's pretty cool, you better branch out over there and at least see what's going on, even if you don't develop a food resource monitor thing on it. Or no, what was it called? A resource building. Not a resource monitor, resource building, like
Farming district.
farming district. That's what
And
it's called. Thank you.
the terminology with the districts, I don't know about you, but I felt like, oh man, this is almost like Hunger Games. Like I'm gonna have this district,
Yep.
this district, that
Yeah.
district.
And speaking of districts and oh, I'll have this one and that one. I kind of messed up with my housing district. My first oil district, I planted kind of too close, like one hex too close to the generator, the heat generator. And so then I couldn't connect my two housing districts around so that I could get the bonus of having them be a right next to the generator and also be right next to the housing district that is adjacent to like the other one that I built on the other side. Those watching on Spotify or YouTube can kind of see what I'm talking about. Hopefully I edit it properly. Regardless, you'll see my gameplay so you can kind of see where my housing district is, but I made that mistake and I did pay for it dearly, especially when the real hardcore cold frost came through. It was mega rough.
Oh man, I did so poorly with my housing district. I put them on top of a hill, thinking that, oh, they'll be fine here. And I forgot that, oh, yeah, the idea is to build as close to heat as possible. So if you're watching my gameplay, again, the same spots, you'll see I'm like so far away from the heat, it's not even funny. So, but.
Oh man,
But
that's rough.
that's just another thing that shows how punishing this game is, because you could sit there and think that, oh, I'll put a house here, or I'll put this oil resource district here, and you think you're fine. But as you start to like put everything else together, you're too far. You're too close to this, and then you have. It reminds me, as a throwback to season 1 when we did the Spore episode. When you got to the civilization stage of Spore and you were able to put like entertainment districts, but if the entertainment was next to the industrial factory, then the happiness of your civilization went down. And if they were too unhappy, then they revolted. And it's just things like that you got to figure out how exactly to position all of these moving parts while the clock is working against you.
And that's just the prologue. Later on in the game, you have different factions that come and approach you. You have different, like even extended districts and advanced buildings and more heat to worry about and all of this crazy stuff. It's it's an incredibly in-depth game, and sequels are very tricky to pull off because if you look back in history just in general over media, sequels are incredibly hit or miss. Some of them are really, really good. I think of like Borderlands to Borderlands 2, right? That game was like super, super good. I'm sure there are others. Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts 2, super, super good. 2 to 3, But regardless, even so, they were very good. And there are others that are just, sequels that are just better and better. But this one I feel like is solid. I understand maybe some diehard fans of the series and those who have played them closer together may see the flaws and think one is better than the other. I played Frostpunk 1 when it came out. Now here it is a couple years later. Frostpunk 2 has come out. I'm playing this one. I think this one is a good sequel. I don't notice any glaring flaws right off the bat, at least for the first few hours of gameplay. I don't know about you, Rayu, but that was at least my opinion in terms of 1 to 2.
So, and I agree with you that sequels are always tricky because you're looking to continue the story, but you also don't want it to be a repeat of itself. And the fact that this one just did a really, really good job of, and that's why I think the prologue did a really good job of like, hey, in case you don't remember what you did in 1, here's an idea about what's happened, and it kind of brings you back up to speed, so you're not completely going in blind. I didn't feel that I needed to go back and play 1 to understand where I was at with 2. I think the prologue did a really good job of bridging that gap for me. And like you said, and I'll reiterate it, those who have played it a little bit more closer are going to be able to see the flaws and see, oh, they could have done this better, done that better. That's one thing that I appreciate about the fact that you and I are coming into this just by itself, not really continuing it, is that we're looking at it from a new player's perspective. And for people that we can recommend games to, even our audience that's listening to the podcast, if you're into resource management games, 100% this is a great game to go through. And if you want to continue the story from the beginning to Frostpunk 2, grab them both. It's a good story, and you'll see that the mechanics are fairly similar to it. The one thing too that I did appreciate that we haven't touched on yet, the cinematic level of the cutscenes. Oh my! There have been some cutscenes in games that kind of like they take you back a little bit. You feel like you're watching a movie. The opening cinematic with the old man in the wheelchair and like the voices and just the menu where you click start, where it's just a person staring at you. Like oh man, so good. Very nice quality, very good attention to it. And even in the introduction to chapter 1 coming from the prologue, and they show you, all right, cool. You got an idea about how to build your city. We're going to give you a city that the other owner, the other leader has died. Now it's your turn to take over this fully established city. And you got to manage everything and do all that kind of thing, which was really cool. I really appreciated that. And also the audio details or the audio effects. If you so with this, you're able to zoom in to like where they're breaking the ice, or you're able to zoom in where they're gathering the construction resources. You hear the individual noises. You hear that there is a change to it. It's not a canned, recycled sound effect. Same with the bustling of the the housing districts and everything like that. So that was really cool. But then again, the attention to detail, the smoke billowing out of the reactor, the lights. When you see the first completed area, once you get into that chapter 1 introduction, all the lights that are on there, all the heat that's being generated, just everything that they did, it was really, really cool. And I appreciate that even as a resource management game where we're going to primarily look at this from a top-down perspective, and we're going to be looking at it as like a resource tiles and all of this, 11-bit went the extra mile to make sure that these little individual things were put into the game. The animation effects, you're not seeing little stick figures walking. It's actual people. You're not seeing these, stationary boxes moving around. No, you're actually seeing the icebreakers trucking through the snow to do what they're supposed to do. Which again, it's the small things for me that really show how much the game developers appreciate the game. And if you look at some of the reviews, not only from critics but also the reviews from the gaming community, these are things that are not missed, and they add to the word of mouth marketing of these types of games, because it's like, I know this is a quality game, so this person is going to like it, sort of thing. So
Well, and also that attention to detail, like when you play this game a lot, and even if you're new, when you zoom in and you see that stuff, you're like, whoa, then it invests you in the world. Then those decisions that you have to make later on are so much more difficult because you saw those details of those people walking around, the plows and the snow breakers going through and destroying all of the ice, and the buildings being made, and well, now I have to sacrifice this building because I don't have enough heat, and all of this crazy stuff. It really lets you absorb into the world. And I also thought that it was interesting. It's interesting that this is a single player game, and I think it's great that this is just a single player game. I know a lot of these styles of games are more on the multiplayer side, but generally they're more like your Civilization, and I think no, Spore isn't multiplayer except for the creature creator. But even so, you have these kind of Civ style games, but now to have one that's more single player is super cool. That it allows them to make these story decisions and lets you carry through, and then you can play multiple different stories, which lets you go to different outcomes and experience different things. But what also lets you experience different things is having Twitch integration. I think is so crazy that this game has Twitch integration. I think it's super cool that you could go through a playthrough and have your community decide for you, or you can hop into a stream and help like vote for some of these different options and these different choices and impact the game in that way. I think that is super, super cool. And it's not possible for every game to be able to have Twitch integration, but the fact that this one does, I think it fits in really well. Rayu, I don't know if you got to experience any Twitch integration for this one, but I hopped in a couple streams and it was fun to influence it was fun to influence some of the results. I'll just say that. I'll leave it I'll leave it at that one.
So I didn't have the opportunity to go into Twitch and see the integration, but I do know that games with Twitch integration and where your audiences can get involved make for some wild things, and they make the game a lot more interesting. So the fact that, again, 11-bit has that relationship with Amazon and the folks at Twitch to be able to incorporate that in their game is really, really nice. Breaking news!
You hear that? It's breaking news! That's right. It's time for our game of the season, Foxhole. A quick update on War 117. Rayu, how was your war experience? Rayu, did you have fun fighting in the Foxhole this week?
So I'm not going to lie. I let the people down. I did. I have not played Foxhole, our game of the season, for this week. But I did fulfill my obligation to the people in another way. I got to bring back the People's Tank in Throne and Liberty. And that's where I've been.
All right, we're just going to cut you off there. You're not going to talk about Throne and Liberty anymore. This is the game of the season. This is Foxhole. That's right. I helped out the colonial side. Okay, unfortunately, after much fighting, the Stemma landing fell to the Wardens. I was about to spawn in earlier today. Unfortunately, I could not in time. Let us remember those who fought valiantly against the battery of artillery, infantry, naval forces, and so many other horrors over on those islands. They were isolated and all alone. They held out as long as they could. But alas. So after that, I went on to fight on the shores of Sickle Hill in the Scarp of Ambrose. We held the Wardens off for a good amount of time, maybe like an hour or two until I hopped off. Shout out to all the Logi trucks constantly keeping us supplied. We sincerely appreciate your efforts. You're awesome. And I had a really good time just like fighting on the front. There were a couple of Warden partisans running around in the outskirts of our base towards the south. The front was to the north. And so they were running around our base to the south trying to mess with our Logi trucks. So we stopped those little partisans, and then I ran over to the bridge over there. You'll be able to see that in the YouTube video, or in the YouTube and Spotify video. Ran over. It's very interesting fighting people that are like on the shore of a bridge, because a majority of them are running onto the bridge and you can just like huck nades and stuff over there. But then they've got machine guns and tanks and artillery. I got gooned by so much artillery. You have no idea. It was wild. I mean, if you play Foxhole, then you'll have some idea. And if you don't have an idea and you want to find out, come join Foxhole, our game of the season. We'll be playing it for the next couple of months. I'm going to start reminding Rayu to stop being a Muppet and join in so that he can have some more breaking news about our game of the season for season 2, Foxhole. And shout out to all of the colonials who are fighting bravely out there. We appreciate you. We will win this war. Currently, we're 23-16, so still the same, but we are making good ground. And now it's time for a new recurring segment, the Subscription Shuffle. Do. Subscription Shuffle. Where we talk about gaming subscriptions, Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, Nintendo Online. I mean, there's even more. What, EA Play, technically like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy have subscriptions, and I mean, how there's like at least 10 plus gaming subscriptions out there. It's kind of wild. But for this episode, we'll be mostly focusing on PlayStation. Ray's got a couple of notes about different subscriptions I see. So I'm going to hop in and go first. And the main reason I want to focus on PlayStation Plus because this week I got a PS5 Digital Slim. They were on sale, so I swooped it up. And I got PlayStation Plus Premium because there was a little deal with the console when I got the console. And so I it was super cool. Like there's the classics catalog, which I immediately there are a bunch of games from my childhood, Jet Moto 1 and 2, which now have trophies. So I can like go back and play those games and earn trophies, which is super sick. Star Wars The Clone Wars, also there's trophies there. That was a huge game from my childhood. And Thrillville Off the Rails, which I actually played on PlayStation Portable. I don't know, maybe there was a console. I'm sure there was a console release, but I remember mostly playing it on the portable PlayStation. So I was super excited, and I am super excited to get into those games and play those more. I don't know, Ray. Did you play any of those? Did you play like Jet Moto 1 and 2 is a PlayStation 1 game. Thrillville and Star Wars, I think, are later on Xbox. Actually, was Clone Wars Xbox 360 or was it original Xbox?
I think Clone Wars was original Xbox.
Hmm.
Nothing a quick Google search.
Not the animated Clone Wars, like the OG Clone Wars. The box art has the gunship on it.
Let's see. Yeah, it has the gunship.
Okay.
So, Star Wars The Clone Wars originally released April 22nd, 2003 on Xbox. It was on the GameCube and PS2 November 2002.
Ah, okay. There we go. So, but regardless, they have trophies now, which is super, super sick. Thrillville Off the Rails does not. There's a couple other games too that I ended up downloading, but those are the like four main ones. And Jet Moto, okay, when I was a kid, I played a ton of Jet Moto. I used to be like okay at it. I wasn't great. Maybe it was just because I was a kid, but I remember winning some of the seasons and stuff. That game is it's actually really hard to play now because the controls there's no joysticks. It's a racing game. I guess I should have described it a little bit first. I got ahead of myself. I'm just so excited. I've got this childhood game. Jet Moto is it's basically like a hover bike racing game. And they have different bikes with different racers on them. And all of the different bikes and racers, like they're a set, right? They have different stats, acceleration, mass, things like that. And there's different teams you can pick from. There's a Mountain Dew team. There's a Butterfinger team. There's I think 4 different teams. If I'm not mistaken, the more you race and win seasons, then you unlock more teams. But regardless, there's tracks you can unlock. So you play the easy season, you unlock the medium tracks. You win the medium season, you unlock the hard tracks. You win the hard tracks, you unlock the secret tracks. And there's all this cool stuff. There's back in the day when games came as a complete game, and the way that you unlocked levels was by playing the game and unlocking the new levels, and you had to find the hidden secret levels and stuff. I'm so excited to play this game now with trophies, and there's also the second one, and you can do 2-player, so I can have a friend over and we can just play old PlayStation 1 games again. Same with Star Wars The Clone Wars. Thrillville Off the Rails is a single-player game, which is Sim City roller coaster style builder game. But man, I'm excited to have this like classics catalog. Then in addition, I'm just going to keep going. I haven't even gotten to the PlayStation Plus games. 3 games that one of them I technically owned already, but it was crazy that it was on the subscription service. Demon Souls, the remastered Demon Souls, is on PlayStation Plus. I believe it is in the premium catalog. It could be the extra catalog. Don't quote me. It's one of the two. That game is super dope. Highly recommended to anyone who has not played it. Thymesia as well. Also a super great game. looks really good on PlayStation 5. I've played it on my PC as well. It was pretty good. Actually think it almost runs more fluid on the PlayStation. Maybe it was developed for the PlayStation and ported elsewhere, but or just my system it didn't run great with, but Thymesia runs super well on PlayStation. And Kingdom Hearts. There's a bunch of Kingdom Hearts games in the PlayStation Plus subscription. I can't remember if it's premium or extra. It's one of the two. But regardless, one of the subscription tiers comes with a lot of the Kingdom Hearts games. And I highly recommend those to anyone who has not played them. We mentioned in the season 1 finale that we would be covering this game this season, so be sure to look out for that and turn those notifications on, all that fun stuff for when we have the Kingdom Hearts episode. But those 3 games I downloaded in addition to the other 4 from the PlayStation Plus Classics catalog. And now my PS5 is like loaded full of games, and it makes me excited. I got it so I could sit on the patio with my dog and just game. I'm sure that a lot of gamers out there have the same vibe of like you have your console in a common place, you just hang out and game, and anyone that comes through, oh, what are you playing on? Oh yeah, this, and maybe they sit down and watch, maybe not. I don't know. If you got a dog, then they're just chilling with you, but it's good times gaming, and people give hate for subscriptions sometimes, but in this instance, it's working out pretty well.
Oh
Rayu,
yeah.
what are your thoughts on subscriptions? Let me
No.
let me hear it. I see your notes.
So I've been a longtime subscriber for PlayStation Plus. Back when it was like PlayStation. Oh, hang on. This is showing my age a little bit, because Xbox had where you had to have an Xbox Live subscription for online play. PlayStation didn't. I don't think it
Yep.
was until the 4 or like the latter half life of the 4 that it became required for online play within that time frame. I've had it since then. So like all of these older games that you're mentioning, Jet Moto, I have not played, but I did play Killzone Liberation. So having that
Okay.
come over to the PS4 was an exciting time. Then of course you have your Lego games, but one that's a really favorite of mine, Medieval and Medieval Resurrection. Those are fun games. Those are ones that I would remember as a kid. I would sit there and play for hours and hours and hours on end. My buddy and I always exchanged stories about that game, and he was Medieval was even featured in PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale on the PS3, I think. Is it a PS3 or PS4? Either way, it's nice to see that some of these older games are, again, getting a second chance at life for us older folks to be able to go back and play them. So for me with subscriptions, as long as there is value to it, I am perfectly fine with subscriptions. However, it's when those subscriptions don't add value that I start to question. I'm like, is it really worth it? So, and this would go back to like the Xbox Live days, where it was a required thing. You had to pay a monthly fee to play online games. Now, because I played on PlayStation 3, that wasn't a requirement. I didn't see a value in why are you paying for online? Like, I don't know if you guys got free games back then or not, but to me, it just
Nope.
seemed, yeah. So it was just something you had to pay for to play online. That's when I saw that as like, oh, Xbox is great. Xbox is the greatest thing ever. It's like, you have to pay to play online with your friends. I don't. And you don't get anything else for it. So, but anyway, for me, that was something that always turned me off from gaming subscriptions. And then when PlayStation and Sony jumped onto that bandwagon, I was like, okay, I figured it was inevitable. It was going to happen at some point because Sony saw Microsoft doing it and people were still buying the consoles. So, whatever. But at least PlayStation gave us free games for our subscriptions for so many years. I've got so many, and the fact that it's in our digital game library and it could just sit there. Like I have games way back when on the PS4 that are just sitting there for me to go back and play whenever I want. Now with the PlayStation tiers and the fact that the classics catalog is pushed into another tier, and even the Sony catalog is pushed into another tier. These are where I'm like, okay, now we're starting to get a little bit much. Now it's not. There's even a Ubisoft Classics catalog that you can pay for. I don't know, man. It's getting to be too
Well,
much.
we'll see how long the Ubisoft stuff lasts.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's the funny thing. So I'm looking at it right now. I've got it pulled up just because I was curious about the Ubisoft stuff. Every single Assassin's Creed is on there. Then you have Far Cry is on there, like the new, like Far Cry 5 and all that stuff. Primal. Now, Far Cry Primal is an underrated game in my opinion. That was a good one. But then you have like Monopoly and Risk and the South Park games. And then it's just like, okay, I wouldn't pay extra for this. I wouldn't pay extra money for any of these. Maybe Watch Dogs, and that's about it. So that's something that I'm not really a fan of, the whole tiering system. Again, the classics being locked behind another catalog is something that I'm just like, I don't like that. I have the essential one, the lowest one that you can get, just because, again, it's required for online play, but then I do get my free games every month, and I just collect those because, believe it or not, you will get some semi-current games for free, and then you could just sit there. Like, I have, what is it, Immortals of Avenum, or Avernium, however you pronounce the name. I've got that, and that game's not that old. I got one of this month's games is WWE 2K24.
Dead Space remake?
Yeah, the Dead Space remake. Like there's some good games. Now, not every month is not a home run. I will say there have been some months that have flopped and they're not worth, but I still pick them up because it's a free game, and who knows, maybe I'll go back and play them. But there are some like this month where it's like, okay, got some good games going now, so you can always revisit those. But I mentioned it before with the whole Xbox Live Game Pass, the Game Pass tiers, and our featured game with Frostpunk 2, it goes to the same thing. I pay for Game Pass. I have Game Pass on my PC, so I have Frostpunk 2, so we could do the show and stuff, which is great. But if I have Game Pass PC version, then I can't access those same games on an Xbox. But if I have Game Pass on my Xbox, well, then I can't access those on my PC, but there's a third subscription that I can have all of it. And it's just like, okay, now we're just getting nitpicky on what devices we're using these things on. So again, if subscriptions have value, and I'm speaking for me personally here, I find no value in some of these subscriptions. If you find value to having it on your Xbox as opposed to your PC or vice versa, then great. I'm glad that you find value in something that you've purchased. For me, it doesn't make much sense for me to pay for an Ultimate Edition to have it on consoles that I don't have. Or even if I did have both consoles, I wouldn't want to pay for it twice. To have some games on one but not games on the other type thing. Like, I just want to play it to be able to play it.
Well, but if you have a PC and an Xbox, I can see where it's useful to have Ultimate, because then like all your saved files, you can just, move from your PC to your living room.
Well, and that's
play
good,
the
but
game the same.
Why charge me more for that? That's what I'm getting at. Is like, if I pay for Xbox Game Pass,
I'll put it to you this way. If you have just one of them, why would you pay more to have both when you only have one?
But why not give me the option
to buy one or the other?
But this is what I mean. So with PlayStation Essential and your monthly game, the games that you download, some of them will have, if they are compatible with PS5, you will get a PS4 and a PS5 version of the same game.
Right.
So I can download it on my 5, and then I can also download it on my 4, and I could play the same game with the same PlayStation sign-in and everything, same progress,
right,
on another console. But if I'm doing Xbox Game Pass, and I have a PC, and I have the PC version of the Game Pass. Well, if I go sign in with the same exact Microsoft information on an Xbox, I don't have that game. I don't have
Well,
access to that game anymore.
well, okay, but are you saying you own an Xbox, or then like you're visiting your friend's house
No,
and?
if I were to own an Xbox.
Well, then why? Okay, but see, that's what I'm saying is you have it. You're in your scenario, you have both. For PlayStation users, it's different than versus Xbox and PC users because I would argue, a majority of Xbox users probably don't have necessarily a PC.
Right.
And vice versa. So it's nice. So the reason they have those split, or they have split options, is because their customer base is quote unquote split, right?
I don't think
Because
I'm describing it
PlayStation
well.
users just have 4 to 5.
I don't think I'm describing it well. What I mean is that by me paying for the PlayStation Essential,
Yeah.
I have access to the same free games that everyone else has access to, regardless of my console. Like if it's
Yeah.
a PS, and I'm paying the same price for
I see what
PS5 or
you mean.
PS4.
Because so
but
you're saying Game Pass has different games for Xbox versus PC?
Well, case in point, Frostpunk 2 is out now
Well,
on
that's
PC.
that's different though. That's a game developer publisher thing because it's not on console, it's only on PC.
Well, but then that would bring the next question is to what's different between it being on a console as opposed to a PC? Because if the game has controller support, which we didn't, which to be honest,
do you really want to ask that because
I
game
do.
development for consoles versus PC is so different. You have to develop them for different engines.
I'm not saying as far as developing, but the fact that
that's
they're
what
saying
I'm saying is
2025, they're releasing it. So
Right.
that would be 3 months
because they
4
haven't
months.
finished the version yet. That's a developer thing. That's not a see if you were to say that, let's say Frostpunk was out on all platforms and the PC pass had it but the Xbox version didn't, then I would agree that sucks. And that may be the case that the PC platform has game offerings that the console version doesn't. I mean, like, case in point, I guess you get like special goodies for League of Legends and Valorant and stuff for the PC Game Pass, right? As opposed to Xbox. But again, that's a publisher thing. That's because those games aren't published on the consoles.
See, now I'm curious if the stores are different for the two between Game Pass. See, okay, the fact that you've had Game Pass longer than I have, and we don't really have an answer for if the games are different, but with the PlayStation, we know they're the same.
Well, but that's what I'm saying though is that a matter of the games being available on the platform, or is it a matter of like the exact same game only being available on one platform versus the other? Because I'd understand if, like, okay, let's use like Far Cry, right? Let's say if Far Cry was only available on Xbox Game Pass and it wasn't available on PC Game Pass, that would suck. But if they're both available on PC and Xbox, then we're chilling. If it's a Frostpunk scenario where the game isn't actually published on the particular platform, it's not published on Xbox, but it's still available on PC Game Pass, and in this instance, when the Frostpunk 2 Xbox version releases, it will be available day one with Game Pass. I think that's fine.
We'll have to see. We'll have to do some more research and figure that out.
People in the comments are going to have fun with this one. Let
really
us
are.
know what your thoughts are on whatever we've just been talking about for the last 5 to 10 minutes.
But I do have one question, though.
The Game Pass and PlayStation differences.
Right. Let us know what you think. And again, like I said before, I've only recently started having Game Pass, and it's only because it's on PC that I've been able to do this.
Yeah.
Or have any kind of opinion, because I won't touch Xbox. I do not like Xbox consoles. I don't like their interface, and that's a whole other segment.
Ooh.
But the one thing I want to ask, as dominant as Steam is, why is there no Steam subscription?
This guy. Oh
Not
my
in a sense.
goodness.
Now hang on.
Oh my goodness. Are you
Not like paying for Steam as a storage or as a launcher or anything like that. What I mean is what if Steam had a Game Pass or PlayStation Plus free games outside of like free to play games? So like, let's say for example Witcher 3, and they're like, instead of having sales, we're gonna give you guys that for this month because you paid for this subscription.
Do you want them to lock Steam Deck online multiplayer behind it too?
Why not? Everyone else is doing it at this point.
Dude, this guy wants to ruin Valve.
I want to make Valve more money.
I Googled, okay, I'm going to refute that one in a second. First of all, the only thing I could find on Gabe Newell officially talking about, or Valve in general talking about a Steam Pass, if you will, was a article from PC Gamer back in February 25th, 2022. And Gaben said, I don't think it's something that we think we need to do ourselves, building a subscription service at this time. Again, this is already over 2 years ago, close to 3 now. But for Microsoft's customers, it's clearly a popular option. We'd be more than happy to work with them to get that on Steam. When talking about getting Game Pass on Steam. So kind of interesting that there was some, Game Pass games on Steam type deal scenario. Gaben was like happy to work with getting some sort of Game Pass games on Steam, stuff like that. But in terms of a popular subscription service made by Valve, and I really hope they don't. I don't know why you would even speak such words. We have so many subscription services already. And like, dude, do you not appreciate the Steam sales?
I do appreciate the Steam sales.
Sorry. Here's my next refuting thing, by the way. You were talking about Valve making more money. Okay. All right. Gabe's net worth is over $9 billion.
That's
okay?
not enough.
This guy. Okay. All right. Whatever. It is what
all
it
I'm
is.
saying is if Steam and Valve do it, I know every single person would grumble under their breath and they'd pull out their credit card at the same time. Because those are the same people that still pay for WoW subscriptions.
Okay. All right. You know what? We're just, before you talk any more crazy stuff, I'm going to thank everybody for staying here as long as they have. Hopefully you haven't been scared away by Rayu's ramblings talking about a Valve Steam subscription. And hopefully you enjoyed us talking about Foxhole, our game of the season here for Q4, and also Frostpunk 2, our featured game available on PC Game Pass, Steam, not part of a Steam subscription, thankfully. Epic Games, which will probably come out with some sort of subscription service-based whatever, and Mac. No clue if they have a subscription. Did you enjoy us talking about subscriptions, though? It'd be nice if you subscribed on YouTube. Hit the follow button. Check us out on X at Variety Games Pod. And be sure to answer the poll. How many game subscriptions do you have? Are you like us, 1 to 3? Maybe you're a little bit more advanced, 4 to 5. Or maybe you're a hardcore gamer. You need a ton of game subscriptions, 5+. Or you save your money. I don't have any. Be sure to vote in the poll. We will see you next week.